Hello and welcome to Extension in the City. This Just-in-Time Learning Series module is on entrepreneurial management in our larger cities. Today's agenda, you'll gain the awareness to learn more about entrepreneurial management factors and resources to help you manage tasks, people, and yourself. You'll gain the knowledge about urban extension management competencies and the ability to leverage resources to address your management priorities. For your activities in this module, you'll be encouraged to prepare a 3 to 5 minute SlideShare presentation. And for your organization, you'll look at your entrepreneurial management and strategies according to the National Urban Extension Framework and see what that looks like as far as where you are and where you want to be. As with all of our modules, we have opportunities for collaborative learning and options for you, your team, and your organization to continue learning more about entrepreneurial management. So this module really has a base on 3 different resources. So the first one is looking at that entrepreneurial theory, and specifically in this module on entrepreneurial management. The second part that we'll look at are management strategies and what we do to manage people, manage tasks, and manage ourselves. And then the third thing that really feeds into this module are those urban extension management competencies identified by urban extension leaders across the country. So let's look briefly at management strategies. There's additional information for you online that relates to this. I really like this structure of how combined much of the work that we do is around tasks, our goals, and how we manage change and problems and our accountability and results and resources. So those task types of things that we do. And then looking at the management that we do with people and those managing teams and communications and organizational learning and relationships. And then for the managing of ourselves, looking at the emotional intelligence that we have talked about in some other modules and what it looks like for work-life balance and some other things. I like this structure that Human Synergistics provided. If you'd like to know even more, there is an assessment. It's a fee-based assessment, but it's one of those things to help you look at yourself as a manager. And they've added to this how we approach our management and things that we do that might inhibit things and things that we could do to help facilitate our management practice. For example, if we're driven by our self-interest versus driven by mutual interest, or if we're process or outcome focused, or we actually recognize the focus, the blending of the focus of both. So I won't go through all those right now, but great resource online. And then as you go through the activities and the other resources for yourself, I think this framework provides a good structure. So let's look at those urban extension competencies that were identified by urban extension leaders around the country. There's a full database of these online thanks to eExtension and EduWorks. And this is one that falls right into the management section, looking at how we plan, organize, adapt, and comply. And then looking at the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are really needed to help us in our work as individuals and as a team. If you look at the next category, also within this urban extension framework, is looking at how we manage resources, human resources, financial resources, and other resources. Again, those knowledge, skills, and abilities to help us kind of see where we are and in what areas we might want to grow in. The next one is that evaluation and accountability, how we analyze and report our impacts to internal and external audiences, and the knowledge, skills, abilities that we need to do that, again, individually and as a team. So we've talked a little bit about strategies, a little bit about those competencies, so you can go online and find more about that. And then looking at that entrepreneurial management theory piece and how that contributes to organizational entrepreneurship. So the first one of those factors is strategic orientation. And authors throughout the years have looked at the strategic orientation continuum and really put different labels on it, whether it's mechanistic or organic. For example, traditional or entrepreneurial, trustee or promoter. So you'll see words like this as you read about organizational entrepreneurship and even assess your own organization. So if you're promoter oriented, really all we need is the resources as the ability to use them. We don't necessarily need to own them. We can leverage the financial, intellectual, and political capital of other organizations. If we're more on the trustee end of that continuum, again, there's no right or wrong. There's a value to both of these perspectives. But trustee-oriented organizations like the stability and efficiency of resource ownership. Sometimes, but not always, it's associated with control, power, and status. But that kind of what do we want to own and control? And entrepreneurial organizations. I think this is really key. This is where we create new resources or obtain or leverage those from other places and combine them in unique ways for innovation, for added value from a customer's point of view. So again, not really right or wrong if you're more on this end of the continuum or this end of the continuum, but really how can we create, obtain, and leverage and combine resources in unique ways to add value for the customers. So the next factor is management structure. And there are many different ways to look at structure, either simple, organic, divisional. Sometimes we use words like centralized, decentralized, or distributed leadership. But there's one model that I ran across that I really like, and this comes from Cotter and their book on Accelerate. And really, they really recognize that we operate in this hierarchy type of environment, especially as a large land-grant university and national extension network. And at the same time, we have this network environment that we work in. And so how do we do that with this dual operating system? Great resources online if you really want to understand more about how we can have an entrepreneurial management with this dual system. So the next factor with entrepreneurial management is on reward philosophy. And entrepreneurship is about risk and reward. We talk a lot in entrepreneurship about risk taking as individuals and organizations, but also looking at this reward element. And how can we have compensation based on value creation rather than just on rewarding seniority? And looking at how we can create a mix of compensation. And this has had the most impact. Research shows that having a mix of compensation has the best impact on performance. And so we're looking at indirect compensation like benefits and other services offered to our team members, direct base pay, merit pay, and incentives. In extension, we haven't always had that option, but I know some universities are looking at options for that. And relational, through recognition, challenging work, learning opportunities. I think this is really key in our work in extension. And there's this relationship. I think this is important to recognize that it's not just about talking about compensation in isolation, that there's this relationship between compensation, performance, and our strategies. And the more that we can have that connection, the more meaningful it is for people. But reward systems in our public agencies or higher education and extension are sometimes often inflexible due to the organization that we're a part of. But public and nonprofit organizations, extension units, we're trying to be more flexible, see where there are opportunities to really tap into people's motivation with our reward systems. And so what kind of entrepreneurial motivation do we know about? So the literature looks at kind of that general piece, that need for achievement, locus of control, vision, desire for independence, passion, and drive. And then when I saw that, I'm like, wow, that's like a position description for an extension professional, especially in our urban areas. And then you combine that with how we can, as entrepreneurs, have the ability to assemble resources, make markets, do product development, and combine that with what entrepreneurial opportunities do we have, what conditions do we have, what kind of vision, knowledge, skills, and abilities combine into that, how do we recognize opportunities, create, and develop ideas. And this all comes into one model on entrepreneurial motivation and the entrepreneurial process. I know this slide is kind of small. This resource is available for you in the online module if you want to see what this can mean for you. And as you look at the reward system part of entrepreneurial management, see where you might be able to make a difference. And the last factor in entrepreneurial management is looking at entrepreneurial culture. And culture has been talked about in extension organizations throughout time, and what that means based on substance and form and hundreds of definitions of culture. But when we look specifically at entrepreneurial culture, some of those components include value creation through innovation and change, that focus on people and empowerment, both internally and externally, hands-on management, freedom to grow and fail, commitment and personal responsibility, an emphasis on the future, and that sense of urgency of what we need to do. And really, as an entrepreneurial organization, looking at that balance of our primary values across a continuum or continuums. So how do we balance performance-based rewards versus our power-based or our tenure-based rewards that we have now? How do we balance that personal purpose and organizational purpose, that command and decision-making and concession decision-making? How can we create that balance? So online, there's an assignment for you to look at essential urban extension management practices, whether you manage a program, you manage a team, or you're an administrative leader at a higher level. But select one management topic, and there are many listed for you in the online module to select from, and then create a 3 to 5 minute presentation that you can share with your colleagues. And if you want, you can also share that as a slide share, and there's a quick guide available to help you do that. So after you pick a topic, select how you want to focus that presentation. Is it on best practices? Is it on a current project that you're working on and the key lessons that you've learned? Is it presenting a scenario and facilitating some dialogue with your colleagues? Maybe even comparing and contrasting a couple of scenarios. So some options for you to look at your priorities and pick one topic that has most relevance and meaning to you. For your organization, you can look at the management resources available for you and begin to develop or contribute to a portfolio that looks at the resources that you have available to you when it comes to your management. It could be who in human resources, the business office, grants and contracts, government affairs, all those tools for professional development, all those people that are available to help you with your entrepreneurial management. And then looking at the national framework for urban extension and really assessing your organization from that entrepreneurial management perspective and looking at where you are with strategic orientation and those other factors that we talked about. And looking at, in that report, we talk about how urban extension in your community is positioned and the urban extension programs, the personnel, and the partnerships, and assessing where you are from a strategic approach versus just on one particular area. And discussion with your colleagues, looking at the barriers and support that you have for those internal connections and impact along an urban-rural continuum. And I mentioned this during entrepreneurial management practice because sometimes we can become so focused on just the urban piece and don't recognize or invest our time and energy in looking at what we intentionally do along this continuum. And it's one of the pieces that you'll see in that National Urban Extension Framework document. Another option for you for discussion is looking at what strategies that you've used to help your support unit leaders or administration understand urban extension management and what they can learn from the stories that you tell, the data that you share, the lens that you can share. So as they support you, again, as a business office, human resource office, or other, that they understand that unique aspect of urban extension. Another option would be talking about how you develop inter-unit relationships. Because many times we just get so caught up in our tasks that we don't invest our time with developing some of the relationships and the people who are supporting us as internal partners to make things happen in our urban communities. Many resources are available for you in this module. Some are general management leadership, but specifically about adaptive or complex systems. Opportunities for you to look at videos, look at ebooks, tap into associations like the Academy of Management or other associations. And the image here in the middle with all those circles is from Cotter on change management. If you're interested in evaluation and reporting, there's a resource on ripple mapping. If you're into trying to make some improvements for that self-management, there are some resources for you on work-life balance. And then some available through Focus 3, which is an organization that talks about some things that I'll elaborate on here in a minute. So optional activities for you: reflect on your organization. If you keep a journal, really reminding yourself, what you're grateful for, the things that support you in your urban extension work, and maybe some areas that still discourage you, and looking at how you could directly or indirectly make some headway there. If you work with a mentor, talk with them about inter-unit relationships. If you work with a coach, look specifically at urban extension competencies, and again, selecting ones that are most important to you. For your self-paced independent study, some of those resources I mentioned on adaptive leadership or leadership without easy answers are available to you free online. looking at management strategy, and some of the managing of the tasks and people and self that I mentioned earlier. Good resources available for you on that. For team collaboration, you have this as a just-in-time learning module, looking at some scenario planning based on that National Urban Extension Framework, that maybe you did some assessment and now you want to do some scenario planning, and then that Focus 3 Performance Playbook. So if you look at the R factor here as one of those pieces in that playbook, that's where an event plus a response influences the outcome. And there are great resources for you on that piece of the playbook, as well as some others that will be beneficial for you and for your team. Again, I'm Dr. Julie Fox with Ohio State University. I look forward to continuing to learn and lead